twice, and we'll go for
it is getting ready for its third time. Right. And you just heard our flight director for the day, Joe Sliker. He just shared that we are going to hold at this T-minus 40-second mark. Keep an eye on one of those Raptor engines on booster.
Para assistir o lançamento do nono voo de teste do Starship da SpaceX. Eu não tinha planejado fazer isso aqui, mas estava aqui assistindo e resolvi gravar aqui no canal, colocar no... eu sempre acompanho todos os lançamentos. E acho que isso é sempre uma coisa que vale a pena, porque é uma realização tecnológica fenomenal. Eles estão guardando a contagem regressiva em menos 40 segundos, com o seu problema com um dos motores.
We'll just continue to hold. Again, we can hang out here for several minutes. We held for a while on the first attempt last time, and then cleared it, and then we triggered a different issue on the ground side.
But again, this is exactly what it's for.
Essa contagem regressiva pode ficar parada aqui por alguns minutos. Se ficar muito tempo, eles têm que interromper e abortar. Opa, reiniciou.
T-minus 30. Let's listen in.
Vamos ver.
That first flight proven super heavy. Get ready to take off from Starbase.
E agora vai. Voltou para menos 4. Contagem interrompida.
We did have a hold, and looks like the clock jumped back to T-minus 40 seconds.
All right, so yep, we jumped down. I did not see the deflector go off. So hopefully
a contagem está parada em 40, aguardando para ver se o problema se resolve.
And if we were before that T-minus 10-second mark, we do have the ability to recycle, as we mentioned earlier, back to T-minus 40 seconds.
So it looked like this time it was a ground side issue. We're taking a look at this real quick. So again, we're back at T-minus 40. We're gonna hold for a little bit. We are still not scrubbed for the day. Give them a couple of minutes to work through this. Again, we can hang out at T-minus 40 for several minutes. Eventually, we start looking at your bulk temperatures and all of your propellant on board the vehicle. We're not actively replenishing the propellant on board Super Heavy and Starship. And so you don't have essentially forever to hang out before things start to warm up. And you do want to make sure your temperature's in a really stable range for a healthy startup on Raptor engines. So they're going to work through this issue. We can continue to hold here for a couple of minutes.
Vamos guardar, ver se esse problema resolve também e se vai adiante o lançamento. Eles só podem aguardar, acho que uns 3 a 4 minutos, senão depois a temperatura do combustível torna inviável.
All right, so cumulatively, we've held for a little over 3 minutes between the two holds. Again, this is a ground side issue on our tower. The techs are looking through the data right now to see if it's something that we can either work through or if it would cause us to have to stand down. So we're continuing to hang out with them, holding at T-minus 40.
Vamos guardar. Os dois últimos não acabaram bem. A gente sempre quer que tenha para a gente poder assistir o lançamento, mas mais importante é que dê certo, né? Então, se não puder ser hoje, vai ser quinta. E vamos ver o que acontece. Aqui no Brasil, pouca gente, pelo que eu vejo, passa esse negócio, transmite esse negócio. Lógico que qualquer um pode entrar no Twitter e assistir, mas a SpaceX não coloca mais no YouTube, agora só coloca no Twitter. Aí aparece um monte de canal, tem um monte de canal de fora que retransmite. Eu estava aqui assistindo, resolvi compartilhar aqui também o stream.
All right, so it sounds like we're coming to a resolution.
O problema na torre, né? Sempre dá aquela ideia de que alguém vai correr lá e chutar alguma coisa.
We are getting to a resolution. We're going to reset everything.
Expectativa, mas sempre tem essa ideia, assim, imagem na mente, né, que a gente vê nos filmes. O cara vai lá correndo, dá um bico em alguma coisa, bate com a chave inglesa e recomeçou a contagem. Vamos ver o que se dessa vez vai.
We saw an issue with that quick disconnect to the ship. There is a chance that automation will kick us out again if we encounter the same issue. But for now, the clock is rolling. We'll see if we pass around that T-minus 10-second mark.
Bom, passou do ponto onde parou da outra vez. Quando começar a jogar água, eles não conseguem mais restartar hoje. Tá indo. Essa é a realização tecnológica mais impressionante da história, né? Esse negócio é uma coisa gigantesca.
T plus 40 seconds, it's one hell of a sight from here. We see it arcing right over top of us. We see 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on Super Heavy as it
todos os
starts to
motores
ascend skyward.
tiveram ignição normal.
Coming up on maximum aerodynamic pressure, then only about a minute and a half until we get into hot staging.
Ele está passando Max Q. Max Q é o momento de maior pressão aerodinâmica no veículo. Teoricamente, quando se tiver um problema, é o momento mais provável de acontecer um problema, né?
The vehicle's power. Now we're just about a minute away from shutting down those engines on the booster. Again, this booster is flying for its second time today.
Esse é um detalhe interessante, né? Esse propulsor é reutilizado, né? Esse foi um dos que foi agarrado pela torre. Esse foi o primeiro, se não me engano, que foi agarrado pela torre.
We're going to see all but the 3 center engines turn off on the booster. So our version of MECO, most engines cut off. And then just a few seconds later, hoping to see 6 engines ignite on ship to push it away.
Pegando o momento de separação.
About 30 seconds.
Hoje eles não vão agarrar o propulsor, ele vai pousar na água.
And definitely keep an eye on which way the booster flips. First ever directional flip we're going for today should flip straight up. See those engines powering down?
Booster engine cut off. Ship ignition. Stage separation.
Incredible.
E todos os
Lift
motores da
by
nave
Super Heavy Booster, and you can see those
acenderam, e
6
todos os motores do
engines, those 3 engines
propulsor
on the
acenderam
ship
também.
ignited.
6 healthy Raptors running on ship on its way to space. Peak that engine view. Booster doing the boost back. Chris, how's it looking over there?
Essa visão é interessante porque foi aí que teve o problema das últimas 2 vezes.
It is looking absolutely incredible here in Hawthorne. As we said, 6 healthy engines on ship. We've got 13 out of 13 engines on the booster, now down to those 3, which is what we expect in the final moments of the boost back burn. Now, as a reminder, we are not recovering the super heavy booster today. We are instead going to do
Booster
some...
boost back, shutdown.
And there we had a good shutdown of the boost back burn. Next up will be the jettison of that hot stage
Ship
ring.
avionics, power and telemetry nominal.
Great call out there that everything looking nominal aboard the super heavy vehicle, which is returning to Earth. And we're going to be doing some experiments with it, including a higher angle of attack re-entry.
Eles estão fazendo uma novas experiências com a aproximação que seria da torre. E aí, por via das dúvidas, por isso que eles não vão tentar agarrar o foguete dessa vez, porque se a coisa não desse certo, podia arrebentar a base de lançamento inteira, né? Então, ele vai pousar na água.
Everything going very well so far for Starship's 9th flight. Now 4 minutes 15 seconds in.
Agora vamos ver, os problemas começaram por volta de 8 minutos nos outros 2 voos.
Aft engine area of ship there, looking at those 3 sea level and 3 Raptor engines on the right-hand side of your screen. The booster doing its LOX dump, that liquid oxygen dump. So because we don't need some of that liquid oxygen propellant in its tanks, we vent that propellant out to lessen the booster's mass as it comes in for its landing. Just absolutely gorgeous views watching these 2 vehicles do their respective things in the skies over Texas here today. And Dan, we're approaching the 5-minute mark into the flight. Super Heavy is descending rapidly. What can we expect here in the next few minutes as it does its atmospheric tests?
Yeah, now as we had talked about, Super Heavy might not have a very smooth ride down. We're going to be putting it through this higher angle of attack. So we're kind of pitching it up a tiny bit, increasing drag. We've done this in wind tunnels. We've done this in computer modeling. It shows that sometimes the control isn't great, but only one way to really prove it out, and that's to get real world data. So here comes Super Heavy. It should be igniting for its landing burn in
Só esses caras que fazem isso, gente.
About 40 seconds from now.
Vamos ver o que dá, a gente testa aqui e vê, né?
And we are going to relight 13 engines, then bring that down to 3 engines. As we talked about earlier, we will be
essa iluminação é de aquecimento da
down
fricção com ar.
one of those 3 center engines intentionally to push the limits of the Super Heavy booster.
Ship Raptor, chamber pressures nominal.
And continuing to see 6 healthy engines on the ship. 3 sea level and 3 vacuum engines still ignited as the Super Heavy booster is making its way back down to Earth.
We can see those grid fins doing some heavy work.
Booster landing, start up.
Ignited for our landing burn.
Você tem cara que vai se arrebentar na água.
It may have ended with that landing burn. Does look like we lost telemetry from the booster once we started into that landing burn. Did you hear confirmation that the booster did demise? So the booster's flight ending before it was able to get through landing burn, but again, we are not bringing that back. We were expecting it to make a hard splashdown in the Gulf. We were getting live data back the entire time through that high angle of attack flight. So that was something that was really vital for us to get during this reuse.
É curioso que a gente não vê nada, né? Esses motores estão todos ligados. No espaço a gente literalmente não vê nada, né?
In about 2 minutes, we expect all 6 Raptor engines to shut down. That will be SECO, basically second engine or second stage engine shut off. And these are some incredible views, Dan, from the aft end of the ship, watching as the engines stay ignited with the Earth in the background.
as always, the Starship avionics team, the techs. I think we just heard the booster. But all right, we got about a minute left into this burn. All eyes definitely on ship as we get through the final stages into its ascent. We're expecting
Esse é o momento em que
those engines
a
off
nave explodiu das outras vezes, né?
in about 45 seconds.
As últimas 2 vezes.
Terminal guidance.
All right, just about 30 seconds to go. We're in terminal guidance. In the final stages of this ascent burn. We did see shutdown of the Raptor engines. We do stagger these, so we do the Raptors first. Those 3 have shut down successfully. Sea levels still running.
Ship engine cut off.
Ok. Chegou no final dessa fase sem passar pelo problema da outra vez.
Ship engine cut off, the 3 most beautiful words in the English language.
And great call out that we had nominal insertion.
Agora acho que vai levar 40 e poucos minutos para chegar no Oceano Índico.
An incredible flight test so far today. We reflew a super heavy booster for the very first time in 9 test flights. Ship is in its orbital trajectory. Again, it's going to remain suborbital for its mission today. But it ignited It ignited all 6 of its engines and made it all the way through SECO just now.
What a moment.
Incredible.
All right, but I mean, that's still lots to come for the rest of this flight. Per usual, I need to collect myself. Hey, Chris, how's it going over there in Hawthorne, man? How's everybody doing?
I think the elation and the excitement and the happiness at what we just saw achieved carried through across all of our sites. What an incredible view to see Starship back orbiting the Earth just under 11 minutes into our mission. Absolutely exciting to see all of this and super pumped, especially to see all of the team's hard work in action here today. As guaranteed,
Eu estou por aqui ainda assistindo, mas vou sair da tela, deixar aqui para poder aparecer a telemetria e tudo. Enquanto isso, enquanto ele está dando aí a volta no planeta Oceano Índico, a gente consegue ver a descida lá.
From Starbase, 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on the Super Heavy, all 6 engines lit on ship, bringing it to its planned suborbital trajectory around Earth. But as Dan said, we've got a lot still coming up in our flight sequence. So coming up at about T plus 18 minutes, 26 seconds, we'll have the first deployment of simulated Starlink satellites planned from Starship. That will be followed at about T plus 37 minutes and 49 seconds by the relight of a single Raptor sea level engine in space. This is going to help us gather data on our ability to do a deorbit burn for future Starship missions that will go orbital. And then, of course, one of the biggest tests yet to come is the new heat shield modifications to Starship. And that'll start with reentry into Earth's atmosphere at about the T plus 45 minute mark, which should take about 16, 18 minutes to complete. And now today's reentry is going to test that heat shield like we said, specifically how Starship will hold up reentry into Earth's atmosphere at about shield tiles on its thermal protection system. Now, we purposely took those 100 tiles off over very critical areas of the vehicle to be able to safely test on a flight like this suborbital trajectory into the Indian Ocean what might happen on an operational flight in those areas if we were to lose the primary heat shield tile.
Uma coisa interessante que ele mencionou agora é que eu tinha me esquecido já que eles vão fazer o deployment de satélites fake, né? Mas no tamanho e formato dos novos satélites Starlink versão 3, para testar o lançamento de satélites pela nave. Esses satélites eles não vão entrar em órbita de verdade, eles vão ser lançados e vão reentrar junto com a nave na
While there are
sequência.
payload simulators on Starship for deployment today, as we will see in a few minutes, the primary data and the primary payload for today is the data. And today, just like with Starship's previous test flights, that data is coming to us courtesy of our Starlink network. In fact, it is from Starlink that you are seeing these wonderful views of ship in space right now. So, and I can't wait to see Starlink really provide those epic views and that data transmission during reentry, which is very, very critical to getting that data during reentry. So, Dan and Jesse, it's been an exciting day so far. There's more to come as we get ready for Starship's first ever payload deploy. What can we expect next here in the next few minutes?
Thanks, Chris. Just going to reiterate, thank you to the Starlink team for these incredible views today. In a few minutes, Starship will deploy 8 Starlink simulators, similar in size to our next generation Starlink satellites. The Starlink simulators will be on the same suborbital trajectory as Starship, meaning they will passively re-enter the atmosphere, just like Starship. With tests like these, we can see how Starship's payload deploy systems work in flight while ensuring that these simulator satellites pose no safety risk to people on Earth or for other satellites in orbit. Now, this also ensures that any parts of these simulator Starlink satellites that do survive reentry splash down harmlessly in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
And then before we get there, though, we're going to have to open up that payload deploy door. So we've only ever done that one time before. Pretty sure it was flight 3. Someone on the internet, please check me. But that was the only time we ever opened it. And we've had Starlink simulators on the last 2 flights, but we haven't gotten to this moment yet where we're able to open up the payload door and start deploying these. It's going to be pretty cool. We've got them stacked inside of the Starship payload bay, and we'll have potentially a couple of views. You saw one camera pop up. Oh, there we go. Look inside of the payload bay of Starship. You can see them stacked down in the middle of your view. There's kind of 4 on either side, so they're sandwiched on top of each other, a stack of 4 right behind each other. And then we're going to pop the door open. It's on the right side of your screen, so we'll see that open up and then start firing those Starlink simulators out into space.
We are expecting the payload door to open in a little over a minute from now. And then once that payload door is open, about a couple minutes later is when we will start dispensing those Starlink simulators.
That's a
what a
view
great
right
view.
at the bottom of the stack. So should be able to see them kind of firing out from right there. So really cool. And eventually these are going to carry dozens of the next generation of Starlink satellite into space, and those are going to enable some truly insane things in terms of speeds from space and what we're able to do. Starlink's been really great for Starship, obviously. Getting live video back is really cool, but just the amount of high-speed telemetry, everything we're able to get back is insane. And for a development program, that's kind of everything. We're in excess of 130 or 160. My numbers are fuzzy right now, just like my brain is, but well in excess of 100 megabits per second of downlink, and a lot of that gets eaten up by video. We've got
essa imagem do interior, né, da nave, com os satélites no dispenser, que é engraçado, que eles mesmo fazem referência a uma balinha que tinha, imagino que ainda tenha, que você vai tirando as balinhas, elas vão subindo dentro de um tubinho, e é o mesmo mecanismo que eles usam para lançar os satélites, teoricamente vão usar com essa nave nova.
Now we are expecting the payload door to open any moment now. So we're watching out for that. Again, you're looking at the inside of Starship as it's suborbital.
Well, we heard the door open was in progress. It was unable to actuate all the way open, so they are going to close it back up. Hal told me no. Said, I'm sorry, Dan. Can't do that. Looks like we won't get the door open today. But that's okay. This is obviously a test we want to be able to do before we're deploying full-on Starlinks. But the real focus for this, now that we are in space, is getting to that reentry. That is the most critical phase of Starship that we still have to prove out. All right, well, so it does look like we're not going to be able to deploy Starlinks today, but we should have pretty frequent views from Starship. They might cut in and out every once in a while, but should be pretty regular. We are in
Agora é
darkness
ver
right
se
now, so
chega na fase de
might be a lot of black,
reentrada,
but
ver
the
se
cool part is when we get to reentry,
desce na
it's going to
água.
be daytime.
Yes, and we did that on purpose so that we can get some live daytime views as ship is returning back to Earth.
All right, so we are going to take a break. Enjoy these views as we get them. Enjoy the tunes. We'll be back in a couple of minutes when we get ready to relight one of those Raptor engines on orbit. See you soon.
Para quem chegou aqui agora no meio, estamos aguardando a nave chegar para tentar descer no Oceano Índico. Ainda deve levar mais uns 20 e poucos minutos. Nesse meio tempo vai ter um teste, teoricamente, de reacender um dos motores. Ainda não está indicado o tempo para ele.
All right, if you're just tuning in, we are about 30 minutes into today's flight test, and the ship is on its suborbital trajectory. As you can see in some of the views and from some of the telemetry, we are in a little bit of a spin. We did spring a leak in some of the fuel tank systems inside of Starship, which a lot of those are used for your attitude control. And so at this point, we've essentially lost our attitude control with Starship. We are still on a path toward reentry. We are suborbital, so no matter what, we are going to enter. However, this lowers the chances for it to be a controlled reentry. So if you think back to Flight 3, when we had something similar happen, just the end symptom of a loss of attitude control, we were in a roll by the time we hit reentry. So we are going to re-enter. We should hopefully still have views. The Starlink satellites are pretty robust to still maintaining contact. We've got 4 of those terminals on the vehicle, and they're pretty robust to maintaining contact even when we are in a spin, essentially. So we should hopefully continue to keep live views. It's going to still be dark until we get a little bit closer to entry, as we are a little bit, we're coming up on Africa. I believe we do swing just to the south of that continent. And by the time we start heading out over the Indian Ocean, we'll start heading into a sunrise. So not looking great with a lot of our on-orbit objectives for today, where we were hoping to do the PES deploy and relight an engine, and then really importantly, get into that controlled entry to really put the heat shield through the ringer. Nonetheless, Starship marching forward towards that reentry over the Indian Ocean. So we'll continue to hang with it and give you any updates as things continue to change. All right, so 36 minutes, 15 seconds into today's flight tests. You're seeing some flat movement here on the ship. If you've been following along, we have essentially lost attitude control on the ship at this point. It is suborbital, so it's still headed to the exact same trajectory as before. We were not able to get that payload door open and deploy those nose cones. We've been dealing with some leaks on the ship. This is also what led to that loss of attitude control. So at this point, we are kind of in a spin, and we are also going to be skipping that Raptor relight. If you've followed through the history of Starship, something similar happened, different cause, but same symptom back on Flight 3, where we weren't able to maintain attitude control in orbit. And so we're going to skip the relight of that Raptor engine while we're in space. We are going to still proceed with entry, but as we are not able to control the attitude of the ship, as we get into entry, it will enter in whatever orientation it is in at the time, which does not bode well for the ship's heat shield, as we're not going to be essentially aligned the way that we want to do for reentry. So it is definitely coming down. It is definitely heading to the Indian Ocean, but our chances of making it all the way down are pretty slim. So we'll still get as much data as we can. We're still getting live telemetry, live views from Starlink the entire time, and we'll continue to stick with ship as it continues on. We are about 10 minutes away or so until we start getting into entry, and the light will start to pick up as we cross the Indian Ocean, and we'll start to see a little bit more daylight, and we'll, as always, as long as we maintain that comm link, get some plasma on the way in and start to bring the Starship back through the Earth's atmosphere. So that coming up in about 10 minutes or so. So we'll check back in with everybody in a little bit.
If
All
you're-
right, so we are 42 minutes and change into today's flight test. You're seeing the light show start as Starship is getting closer to its reentry. If you're just tuning in, we were able to successfully make it to orbit, run into a couple of issues as we've coasted to our entry point over the Indian Ocean. At this point, we had lost attitude control of the ship and entered into a spin. The team made the call to do what's called passivate the vehicle. So we're essentially venting all of the remaining propellant overboard, and it's going to make an uncontrolled reentry. Important to note, this is a contingency that is planned for, and we clear the zones in the Indian Ocean where these entries could take place. So we're not going to come down exactly where we would have had nothing happened, but we do clear a tremendous amount of space out in the Indian Ocean in the event that we run into this. We understand that there are always risks essentially with these flight tests with the hardware, but we don't really accept any compromise when it comes to protecting people.
And it is one thing to note is we will actually still re-enter in our planned airspace zone, which is good. That is exactly what we planned for. You know, we do plan for if something does go a little bit off nominal, that we have enough airspace cleared out for situations just like this.
Yeah, reentry is still just that really critical phase that we need to try and gather as much data, as much information as possible. Is a fully reusable heat shield has never been flown before, history of space flight, and that's something that Starship still has to crack. And so we had a whole range of experiments on this one at this point, and we just started to lose some of our cameras. So it's very possible that we'll start to lose contact with Starship a lot sooner than we would have if it was a nominal reentry. So we are expecting it to break up essentially on its reentry over the Indian Ocean. So not able to do a lot of our on orbit objectives today, but just the fact that we, got it into space was just a really big moment for a lot of the team.
Yeah, and another thing to note is that Super Heavy did fly for its second flight today. It first flew on flight 7, and it made it all the way to our shutdown of all the engines and stage separation, getting ship into its suborbital trajectory today. It did ignite its 13 engines, but it did demise at that point. We did plan to fly it back down to Earth at a higher angle of attack, and we do expect it to stress the vehicle a lot more than what we've seen previously. So it's not unexpected that we did lose the booster before we got to the actual landing.
Yeah. So we're gonna continue to hang out and see if we get any updates on ship. It does look like we might be getting some video back soon. There we go. So this is a view essentially on the top part of Starship. You're looking up at the payload bay and towards the nose cone. So views are going to be a little bit scarce potentially, as again, we are in essentially a tumble. We have lost that attitude control. So Starlink, when it's able to connect, able to feed this down, we are at the phase where we would
Deve ser belo espetáculo visual na região, desde que você esteja bem distante de onde ele vai cair.
Airspace and a sea space that is cleared and monitored in advance of launch and before we get to this phase.
And with the views that we are able to see, you are seeing a lot of that plasma build up. During reentry, we do expect the vehicle to see about 1400 degrees Celsius. And there you can see the flap feeling that temperature there, a little bit melting away. But as we expected with the spinning of the vehicle, we are no longer controlling the attitude of the vehicle. So this is now at this point in the test flight, it is expected to see it begin to demise a little bit on its way back down to Earth.
Yeah, and so we'll stick with it for as long as we're kind of getting any reach back from the ship as it starts to make this reentry. But yeah, so it's re-entering actively right now. And again, we did do what's called passivation. So you essentially vent all of your excess propellant overboard before you hit the atmosphere. That's a safety measure we can take on the ship while you still have contact with it. So that was done. It's now coming down in the predetermined hazard area that was cleared ahead of flight. Not controlled, so we're not going to get all of that reentry data that we're still really looking forward to. This is kind of a new generation of ship. It has different flaps, improved heat shield, a whole lot of things that we're really trying to really put through the ringer, as there's a whole lot we still need to learn before we get to kind of the next step that we're hoping for, which is going to be that ship going orbital and eventually coming back here for a catch. So getting through one of these fully is going to be really important. It's not going to be today, but we are just going to stick with the ship, see what else we can learn as it makes its way through the atmosphere and brings an end to the 9th flight test. So we'll stick with it.
Eu acho que a partir daqui não vai ter mais imagens para a gente acompanhar. Então, vou encerrando por aqui. O resultado não é o que a gente gostaria, mas não explodiu. Não explodiu significa que eles conseguiram eliminar aquele problema que estava impedindo eles de conseguirem fazer a versão 2 da nave terminar o lançamento. Né? Vamos ver quando é que vai ser o próximo e qual vai ser a combinação de booster e nave para o próximo lançamento. E é isso aí, gente. Quem ficou aí acompanhando comigo até aqui, obrigado pela companhia. A gente, quem sabe se vê no próximo lançamento e quem sabe com mais sorte.
We did have an on-time liftoff from Starbase Texas at
Isso é uma novidade.
6:30 p.m. Central Time of the Flight 9 vehicle. We did have some incredibly stressing objectives today. The Super Heavy booster flew for its second flight. It first flew on Flight 9 and made its way to take ship all the way up to stage separation, doing its second flight ever, which is pretty incredible. We did lose the booster on the way back down, as we did fly it back down at a higher angle of attack. So as expected, we did have it demise on the way back down.
Yeah, we were able to get all the way to that landing burn, though. So we made it through that higher angle of attack. So a lot of great data that's going to help us improve those future booster flights.
Yeah, we did do the directional flip and it worked.
Yep.
It was actually
Flipped
a great
right
view
direction.
that we saw. And then ship continued 6 healthy Raptor engines in the beginning of its flight, making it all the way to SECO and coasting for quite a while. We made it to the expected time that we would open up the payload door. Unfortunately, the door did not open as we expected it to, so we did not deploy the 8 Starlink satellites.
Yeah, we ran into a couple of issues once ship got there, but I can tell you it was a pretty crazy moment for a lot of the people that were standing here for ship to make it there. It's been a couple of flights, but it was really exciting to see. Ran into some issues on orbit. We weren't able to deploy the Starlinks. We eventually lost attitude control, dealing with some propellant links inside of the ship. And we did lose attitude control. And just to confirm, we did lose contact with the ship officially a couple of minutes ago. So that brings an end to the 9th flight test.
Já se arrebentou na atmosfera.
Still a lot of work to do, but really big moment. Chris, how's everybody doing?
Ficamos por aqui então, gente. Depois, quem sabe a gente acompanha juntos na próxima, quem sabe tem um resultado melhor. Obrigado pela companhia para quem ficou aqui.
We're here to learn, and that was definitely the vibe and the atmosphere here at Hawthorne. Would have been great to see ship get all the way through its objectives today, but